On the Standard is the farewell like no other. And of course, the British aristocrats showcased the best of their culture and rituals as the world bid goodbye to the longest-serving monarch, Queen Elizabeth II. With billions watching the ceremony around the world, the power play, color, and honor accorded to the Queen was one of a kind. And just to bring you up to speed, this particular story has taken pages 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. It's actually the main story on this particular daily. Queen Elizabeth lived from 1926 to the year 2022. That's what I actually have here on the Standard. Simba, before I dig deeper, what do you have on your daily?
Wait, how many pages are those of that particular story? On the Standard?
My goodness. 2, 4, 6, 8,
4, 6,
9.
8, 9.
I think they're like around 11 pages.
Wow.
12.
Of that particular story?
Of that particular story.
Okay, well, what the bigger relevance of that, of the Queen's passing, you know, we are a Commonwealth nation, aren't we?
We are.
So when we have our dailies giving that much coverage of that particular story, I don't honestly, I don't know what to feel about it. But that's my personal opinion. But here's the thing, they covered it, so if you really want to read so much into the relevance, wow, even losing it just because
Simba,
of that.
might I say something? I think one of the most interesting things about this might not really be because it's anything else, but anyone would be interested in, you know, her story. She's the longest serving monarch, you know.
Fine.
That is interesting. You want to know her story. What would this mean to Britain? Mm-hmm. You know, we already saw people carrying placards calling out for, we want an end of, you know, the monarch and all that. And this might actually be really, really an interesting turn, just in case. We also want to see how Charles is going to take over the crown. I mean, it's quite interesting, Simba, I think. But of course, the coverage on our dailies, that's something I might not talk about.
Just going to leave it there for me, yeah. Got a lot of personal feelings, especially when you look at the stories of her reign in the country. And if you want to dig so much into that history on what the monarch's influence was then to the breaking out of the Mau Mau era in this country, you will read into it. Anyway, the Daily Nation is talking about, it's just simple, plain and simple. End of an era. Let me just give you that kicker. Now, Britain says farewell to Queen Elizabeth II at a historic state funeral attended by world leaders, among them Wema Gardens. As a country, much changed since the Queen's coronation in 1953. Digs deep into centuries of tradition to honor the only monarch most of its citizens have ever known. You want to read into that story, pages 2 and 3 of the Daily Nation.
Only pages 2 and 3.
That's how you do it.
Oh. Well, I need to have a sit down with these people. I might not keep mentioning them, but this daily here, we need to talk.
Yeah, right. Told you, Ankey.
Quite interesting.
That's how you do it.
Yeah, but of course, like you mentioned, world leaders joined Britain at the state funeral. So I think, well, the fact that world leaders came in as well, you know, we also have Queen Grand Final journey to the resting place. I think what makes this a wider coverage is that they've given portions of each of that particular ceremony, Simba. So in each page, you're giving figures and facts about the Queen's funeral. You know, there's the piper who woke Queen up every morning. It just highlighted different personalities, different persons. That made the coverage on the Standard a little broader compared to what we have on the Daily Nation. Even the Queen's long relationship with Kenya has been put in detail, including the pictures of her and the late former President Daniel Moi on her visit to Kenya in 1983. That has been captured on page 10. We're seeing pictures of the late Queen Elizabeth II also highlighted on the same page 10, a picture of her and the late Jomo Kenyatta, founder of this republic in 1972. Different pictures of her with, of course, visits in Kenya, the Treetops Lodge, a particular village. We're seeing her pictures, Princess Elizabeth and Prince Philip, the late, waving from the City Hall, Nairobi in 1952, also highlighted just before hearing of her father's death. And like you mentioned, Simba, it is on this particular ground that she actually heard of her father's death and immediately got, you know, had to rush back and actually take over that seat as the Queen of England. Now, Queen Elizabeth II also inspects a guard of honor on her her arrival, pardon me, at Nairobi Airport in 1972. So quite a journey and relationship with Kenya highlighted. So that's actually what we're seeing here on the Standard. So that's why I think there's so many pages of this particular story. Details quite interesting to read, including Queen's death reignites calls for apology to Africa for colonization. Simba, that's where I think the many reserved emotions are going to be coming up, because on page 11 of the Standard, they have not just highlighted the funeral and everything around the ceremony, but they have picked something that has actually been witnessed right now since her death. The one legacy of British colonial rule is that Nigeria is home to one of the world's biggest Anglican communions. Now, what's happening right now is the many youth are grappling with how to reconcile the painful past with the present. It has awoken the colonization feelings in certain countries in Africa. Yes.
And that's the biggest, I mean, when you look at us Africans, then that's the conversation.
That's the conversation.
That should be the conversation, Ankey. I mean, whether you like it or not, yeah? Because then the exact impact, when you evaluate it, when you read into stories like that, if they did cover that, then
yes, it
means that they looked into that side as well. And as a black man in Africa, with a deep history in how some of my relatives, by they're very, very close, yeah, some of them are alive. So telling you how the consequences of being colonized were, okay, it makes sense for us to look at it maybe with a pinch of salt. Here's the thing, not everybody is celebrating. Right. Also, if you really want to know exactly what's going on in the country, there's a lot that is happening in the banking sector or industry, if you want to look at it like that. We do know that the Banking Act that was supposed to also encompass the digital lenders is also now taking effect. What we do know, 10 have been already given the green light, and I'll be telling you much more of how Kenyans now are questioning who are these names that have been giving us money, because if you look at the 10, they're not really names that they are quite accustomed to, with the big ones in the country also now waiting for that particular green light from the Central Bank of Kenya. Now remember, only 288, but currently there are more than 1,000 plus that were operating in the country. So CBK is saying, if you're not then given that green light by actually that application by September 17th, which was last week Friday, isn't it? You're not going to be allowed to operate in the country. So that is exactly what it is right now. Reading into that story on page 10 of the Daily Nation.
I really would love to read that. Now, I want to wrap up this for sure, but there's a pull-out on the counties which someone needs to actually read. What I like is that we have something here on children, and you know that it's very important that we are able to cover and protect our children. Even as I wrap up on this particular daily, on page 23 of the Standard here, we're seeing the state is to push new act to boost children's rights. And we're seeing state pushes for full adoption of the Children's Act, the year 2022, that is Children's Act 2022, to raise the level of care that came into effect in July this year. Also, Kenya, key challenges include care and documentation of intersex and mobilization of more sources, with officials calling on county governments to come on board. And I think that's actually something you might want to look at, especially people from the children's welfare, people around policies, gender, and etc. Even schools, I think, and parents. Just grab a copy of that and read. And I think that's actually something for the children. They are the future. They're the generation that is so vulnerable. I guess that's it. Simba, I'm done with this one.
All right, now we take a short break right here on the Morning Drift. Once we come back, let's see exactly what it is that you're talking about online, in as much as what is trending this morning is concerned. Once we come back.
Welcome back. This is the Morning Drift. And besides the dailies, of course, the newspaper review where we have headlines, and so far what we've seen there is all about the end of an era. Queen Elizabeth II has now been laid to rest, with a number of world leaders being there, including President William Ruto. Still on his State House diary, we're expecting him to actually meet Joe Biden, the President of the United States of America. But now we cross over to what is trending on social media. We are giving more more attention to Twitter as one of the handles, and you know we want to appreciate Kenyans on Twitter on KOT. Yeah, that group of people can be quite a force. We are at Look Up TV, also on Twitter at Dorice Ankey is my personal handle.
Oh yeah, I am at Kiage Simba over there, but it's lost in a minute. We're just looking at exactly what it is that you're talking about. So let's get straight into it. By the way, if you go right now and see exactly what Kenyans are talking about, and just like we intimated it on our newspaper review, there's a lot that is going on in the financial services sector, especially under the digital lending industry in the country. Now the CBK is bringing majority of this under the umbrella under the Banking Amendments Act of 2021, by the way, that came into effect on the 23rd of November 2021, which gave all the digital lenders in the country time, therefore, to organize themselves and come under that legal framework. It's got like 10 areas, straight from confidentiality to credit information, and also customer treatment. It's also quite, it's go-rated, by the way, it's quite expansive. Now, Central Bank of Kenya did announce just the other day that only 288 had applied for that license, and as per yesterday, they also did announce that only 10 had been given the green light then to continue operating. We'll be looking at into Look Up Business today. By the way, we'll be giving you those full names. But so far, Tala is trending. And why it's trending is because these are among the biggest digital lenders in the country. What we do know right now is that it has missed the first round of being given a license. Of course, we do know, Ankey, that indeed that process is going on, but bigger ones like Tala and the branch are also missing in that top 10 list of those ones that have been given the green light then to continue operating in the country. That's exactly where we are.
Someone would actually say quite an irony. You do expect that they'll be probably the first to be actually on the list. The fact that they are missing is probably raising eyebrows like, what an irony, what might have been the miss. But, well, sometimes very unpredictable. Perhaps then it's a call for people to dig deeper and understand the process is ongoing. That's a good thing. But Simba, besides what you're actually talking about, and I know we've touched on, seeing the African presidents in, that particular state, and now that made Magufuli trend, the late president, former president of Tanzania. And you know how he used to speak. You know how he would relate to the Western countries. So this what we saw yesterday as the farewell to Queen Elizabeth II revived certain memories of Magufuli, and that has caused him to now trend since yesterday into today. So for this reason, I'm seeing, in relation to that picture of the African presidents, including President Ruto, really with that broad smile in that particular, well, I'll call it a bus for now. And people have gone on Twitter worldwide. We're getting tweets from all over Africa. And I can see here Papa Mark Makunda with that particular Magufuli trend saying African presidents, Ndomana, the late Pombe Magufuli, didn't associate himself with the whites. So quite an agitated member there saying this wasn't the best way to actually treat the heads of state from the African continent. If I just move further slightly, we have, interesting, highlights, including videos of the late Magufuli now also being highlighted. But Ian at SEMC says President Magufuli would never. So apparently, I think people are a bit, not very happy as far as that transportation was concerned. They're just saying Magufuli was a different leader, an African leader who wouldn't stoop that low. That's what they call it, stooping low.
It was quite unnecessary. By the way, and they had a choice to go or not to go, because if you look at that invitation letter as well, it indicated exactly what they were expecting after landing in the UK. Because they were told no security detail, because then if you look around, we are so overwhelmed. In fact, they even had to cancel a couple of matches. Match night they didn't play, and the whole reason they were giving them is that majority of the security detail that we have in the country has been reassigned, and we are kind of overwhelmed. But then you go on to invite the 2,500 guests, that's top
I think they're about 3,000
into the UK. But then you see, Ankey, whether you like it or not, I look at my president, that is a President William Ruto, and I say, if indeed you're going to invite my president to that ceremony, you better make sure that nothing happens to him. And then you go right ahead and put him in a bus. Yeah,
but nothing happened to him.
Huh? No,
Nothing
hold on.
happened to him.
That's not security, though, because security is what if it did.
But
that's security. I mean, Ankey, you having a dog or you having a gun or you having a gun doesn't mean that, well, throw it away because today nothing happened to you. But what if? Because security is what if.
You don't know what is surrounding that bus. They are secure. They're heads of state. No, they were just together. They were in this together.
Fine. But when you bundle all of them in couches and then you start transporting them at the same time.
Are you trying to say they might harm each other?
No, that's not what I'm saying. That if you're to harm them, then you would harm them collectively.
True.
What would happen to Africa?
They wouldn't be harmed.
No, what would happen to Africa?
They wouldn't be harmed. I'm staying positive. They wouldn't be harmed. No one would. Oh, you're trying to say, the other forces might want to harm that particular.
That's what I'm saying.
They were secure.
That's an opportunity to harm. If you want to, if you want to create a headline.
All right.
I mean, it's not like we haven't seen, by the way, heads of state getting armed. I mean, over the past 2 months, I can point you out to cases. Some of them, we've lost the prime minister in this world, big ones, just out of a security thief, And then you go put all our presidents as a continent in one bus, and you say, by the way, I blame them as well, because they were told exactly what was going to happen.
Yes, that's the whole point. And when they were told, they were also prepared, Simba. This is what I would say.
Which makes us question, why would you treat them like that?
I will still stand. I don't think there's anything wrong. And I'm actually agreeing with Miguna Miguna. I'm going to read what he said, just briefly.
Oh, by the way,
and this is my point. This is the, funeral ceremony of the late monarch, Queen Elizabeth II. It's not one of those funerals you're just going to throw people around. Already there was full security around that premises. Already, this is the Queen, Simba. It's not one of those things you're going to worry about securities, especially even for the heads of state. I am just saying that as far as security is concerned, this was all in place.
They seemed quite worried about the security of Joe Biden. They were way worried. Allowed his entire convoy to get into the Buckingham Palace.
This is the United States of America.
That's the thing. It doesn't matter.
All right, so this is what Miguna Miguna said, and I think I agree with him. This one time, I agree with Miguna Miguna. He says there's nothing wrong, and I agree, with African presidents and prime ministers taking buses to the funeral. It is the right thing to do. Good for taxpayers, excellent for the environment. We don't need convoys. 2,500 convoys, where are you going?
Which taxpayer?
And some antidote lesson against obscene opulence.
Which taxpayer?
And humility is important, These guys are always buying cars, millions, wasting it. It's good to understand that not every time you need planes and convoys and thousands of cars on one street.
It's not a problem. If you invite me,
they were safe.
If you invite me to your house, and you know very well that I don't sleep hungry, do not make me sleep hungry. You invited me. Accord me the respect. Accord me the treatment that I deserve. Which taxpayer is Miguna Miguna talking about? They were in the UK. We're not paying for that.
But they're picking lessons.
The only thing we paid for is a flight for William Ruto to go all the way to UK. So after that, the UK government was supposed to make sure that my president was accorded the respect. Have they ever seen William Ruto in a bus in Kenya?
I'm glad to have seen him on one, and I'd love that when he comes back. Yes, when he comes back, he can now boost the infrastructure, work best. What happens with BRTs? Let him work on the transport sector, get really good buses where we can have our ministers board them, we can have our governors board them with the 190. That is what we want to see. So let's upgrade our own transport system and security so we have this kind of movement. I would actually advocate for that, but I'm just going to leave it at that, Simba. You're not going to talk about Arsenal today. I think that's it for what's trending from my end on the tweets.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
Let's take a break then, because there's a lot we can talk about. But they are trending. It's not like I'm going to create it myself, but we'll just put it on the side. Anyway, guys, we take a short break right here on the Morning Brief. Once we come back, I'll be taking you right into the newsroom so we can see some of the headlines that you are waking up to today. Arsenal is actually trending.
Get a chance to wake up as a tourist as you view Mount Kenya every day by buying a plot of land at Wema Gardens, Naru Moru. At only 400 meters off tarmac, this is the right place to build your dream home, cottages or holiday homes. You can also buy this property to give to your children as a special inheritance. Water and electricity are in the vicinity, while neighbors are already building their homes. These plots are specially ready for you with title deeds scheduled to be out in 6 months. Buy a 50 by 100 plot of land at Wema Gardens for only 399,000 Kenya shillings. You can also pay for your plot through our friendly 1-year installments plan.
Africa. Our economy has a bit. It never stops, always beating. Our business, the next global economic frontier. Let's talk African business.
Michezo na wachezaji, matukio na matokeo uwanjani. Tumejifunga kibwebwe kukuletea mbwembwe. Si mazungumzo ya kusisimua. Ndiyo maana safu ya spoti ipo hapa kwa ajili yako. ZFC! Nami hapa nahodha Robert Chacha, si suisui, na kuandalia kipindi bomba cha safu ya spoti kila siku ya Jumamosi kuanzia saa 7:30 hadi 9:30 ndani ya runinga nambari 1 ya michezo Lookup TV.
I'm back. You're still watching The Morning Drift. Let's cross over to the newsroom so that we can see exactly what are the biggest headlines that you are waking up to this morning. Now, hundreds of our world leaders and people across the globe paid their final respect to Queen Elizabeth II. Britain lays to rest its longest-serving monarch to mark the end of a reign that defined an era.
The Queen's lifelong sense of duty has been remembered at her state funeral service at Westminster Abbey. 2,000 people, including world leaders and royalty, attended the funeral, and crowds lined the streets for the procession of the coffin. King Charles III led the somber procession behind his mother's coffin from Westminster's Hall to the Abbey. A small committal ceremony attended by about 800 guests was held at the St. George's Chapel in Windsor Castle. Guns were fired and bells tolled to mark the Queen's arrival in Windsor after he travelled there from London. King Charles, Princess Anne, Princes Andrew and Edward, as well as Princes William and Harry, walked behind the hearse in the final procession. Before the Queen's body was taken for burial next to her husband of more than 70 years at a private family service, earlier, the Dean of Westminster, Reverend David Hoyle, began the morning service at the Abbey by speaking of the Queen's answering commitment to a high calling over so many years as Queen and the head of the Commonwealth. The congregation sang the Lord's My Shepherd, a hymn sung at the wedding of the Queen of the late Duke of Edinburgh, which was also held at the Abbey. The phrase was used by the Queen in a rare address to the nation at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. As the Abbey service came towards its end, the last post was played by the same musicians who performed it at the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral. The nation came to a standstill for 2 minutes of silence. A piper then played a traditional lament before the king stood silently as the national anthem was sung. Among the personal touches was a handwritten message from the king, which was placed on top of the coffin in a wreath of flowers cut from the gardens of Buckingham Palace, Highgrove House and Clarence House at his request. The Queen's death marks the end of a 70-year reign that defined an era. Brian Amuai, Look Up TV.
Now, the increased high cost of fuel prices has affected the Republic and regular fuel users across the country, with the heat affecting not only the motorists, but a common mwananchi who survives on a hand-to-mouth basis. Our reporter Moses Okech takes a look at families that use fuel on a daily basis and how they now feel the pinch of the hiked prices.
Kenyans across the country will be forced to dig deeper into their pockets after government subsidy on the fuel prices, which led to the Energy Regulatory Commission (EPRA) to raise its price bar on the product. On a sunny afternoon, we meet Rehema Cherop, a resident in Kawangware area in Nairobi, who's on a kerosene hunt to fuel her little stove.
Stove natumia, nanunua mafuta ya 1 liter, naweza tumia siku 4, siku 3. Sina option nyingine ati naweza sema nachukua gas nichase, gas iko juu, pesa hakuna, kila kitu hakuna.
The flames from the stove must achieve its objective by the end of the cooking process, since Cherop lacks any other alternative but the daily 20 to 30 shillings spendings, which she finds quite demanding.
Sasa sababu sina auction, nichakamua, ninunua mafuta kidogo, kila siku tu hivyo tu. Sababu sina hata wasi, lazima nichikakamue, ninunue yenye naweza. Yenye najua hii natumia, kesho tena ama jioni, ninunue najua yenye natumia.
As the waves for the task becomes unbearable, she hopes that the new government led by President William Ruto will intervene to lower the cost of living.
Mimi naomba serikali warudishe vitu chini. Sababu hii president mwenye ameingia amepata uchumi iko juu. Sasa yeye na achikase arudishe chini.
On the other side, Catherine Kathini was forced to shift from fuel usage to find other means that will be favorable.
Nilikuwa nasema kwa wiki 400, nilikuwa natumia 400 kununua mafuta ya stove. Sasa nikaona hiyo mafuta ya stove nikununua kila wiki 400 na gas nikirefill ito overdose. Sasa nikaona hiyo gas namaliza more than 1 month na sasa kwa nikitumia stove na maliza karibu 1600 per month. Sasa nikaona ni expensive sana.
Last month, the government promised to pump more money into the fuel subsidy. The state's move will save consumers from spending more than 200 shillings per litre on the 3 petroleum products. Speaking during an interview with one of the local TV stations, the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua seems to have heard the mwananchi's plea.
Looking for a permanent and sustainable solution. It would have been foolhardy and deceptive to the people of Kenya to continue with subsidizing the fuel only for a short while, and then we have an economic shutdown. We must look for a long-term solution, and I want to urge our people to be very patient, and things will work out. We don't want a solution that is temporary or is deceptive.
As the pain of increased fuel prices hits a common man, the question remains in different homes across the country. How will they be able to operate in their operations on a daily basis? Moses Okech, Look Up TV.
Members of the National Assembly yesterday began their 5-day induction at the Safari Park Hotel in Nairobi. The induction process is aimed at attacking the legislators through the operations of the House to ensure effective execution of their mandate.
Members of Parliament today thronged the Safari Park Hotel, the venue for the induction of members of the August House, chaired by Speaker Moses Wetangula. The induction is aimed at familiarizing new members with their roles in the House for proper execution of their mandate according to the Constitution. Speaking during the sessions, Central Bank of Kenya boss Dr. Patrick Njoroge indicating that they are undertaking a survey after the elections and they will forward their submissions to the National Assembly, adding that inflation had become an endemic world problem, which has contributed to Kenyans in the diaspora not remitting much money back home due to the strain of the global economy. On his part, Speaker Moses Masika Wetangula urged members to familiarize with House standing orders, insisting that members of Parliament must ensure they work for the electorate as they hold high expectations of them. Wetangula further assured the members that their welfare will be taken care of by the House, asking members to do in-depth soul-searching as they endeavor to create a legacy for the 13th Parliament.
That expectations on you are huge. A member of Parliament in your constituency You are a funeral undertaker. You are a midwife. You are an extension officer in farming. You are a vet. You are a counselor on social issues. You literally do everything. And above all, you are also the local ATM. Yes. So my leadership will ensure that we facilitate you to discharge some of these unexpected demands from the public.
Yin Kitani, Look Up TV, Nairobi.
By the way, they also want to introduce the sitting allowances. That's going to be maybe one of the areas they're going to debate on once they get back to the House. Sorrow engulfed congregants of the Lurambi Salvation Army Church, Sirichai area, Kakamega County, after they found the lifeless body of their night guard lying at the altar. The 68-year-old guard allegedly died in his sleep as his shoes were neatly placed next to his body. According to the church preacher, Captain Moliva Muhando, the deceased had a complaint of body pains previously.
Shock and sorrow jam-packed the congregants of Lurambi Salvation Church after they found the body of the night guard lying at the altar lifelessly. According to Nyongesa Benson, a member of the church, both doors to the church were locked, forcing him to find other ways to access the church. Benson found the unharmed, cold body of the 68-year-old guard lying at the pulpit next to his shoes.
Sasa hivi saa 2:30 askari bado unalala. Nikasonga karibu niweze kumtazama, kweli analala. Kaona hali yake sielewi, nikatoka nikaenda nikaita afisa ambaye pia alikuja akakonfirm kwamba msee halali ni kama ameenda.
The church's preacher, Muliva Muhando, claims that the deceased had previously complained of body pains, but he sought no medical attention.
Amekuwa kwa sababu ya uzee, kwa sababu ni mzee wa umri ya miaka 68. Amekuwa akicomplain mambo ya kuumwa na mwili na kadhalika, na mara nyingi huwa ametumia tu painkillers na hajakuwa mgonjwa kiasi cha kwenda kulazwa. Na mara nyingi huwa naongea na yeye, na mara nyingi saa zingine unamwambia si uombe ruhusa, tukupe ruhusa uende ukae nyumbani kidogo, anasema hapana, sijazidiwa kiasi hicho. Na kwa hivyo amekuwa hivyo mtu wa kujikaza mpaka asubuhi ya leo ndio tumempatana naye akiwa ametuaga.
The body was transferred to Kakamega mortuary, awaiting post-mortem to ascertain the cause of death. Mudeundalana, Look Up TV.
Now, Net Peace Kenya in Samburu County has organized a workshop to the youth to empower them to engage in productive ventures rather than banditry. This comes as insecurity escalates in the areas as youth indulge in cattle rustling, car highway robberies, among others. Speaking after class, the NPK CEO Kubai Kahara speaks of a need for a secure community.
Learning is ongoing. A class is in progress. Students are seated jotting points from their teachers. These students are youths from Samburu County who have accepted the peace call from the Net Peace organization in abstaining from banditry and practice positive endeavors in building the community.
To have secure sources of livelihoods, because that way will contribute towards building a very stable country.
The organization's chief executive officer Kubai Kahara has stated climate change as a contributing factor in security since many are trying their ways for survival.
Because the reality is climate change has created serious vulnerabilities, and because of that we need to empower our communities to adapt to these changes in the climate, and one way is diversifying the sources of livelihood, so that, for example, in case of a drought, you do not have a situation where households are being decimated and driven into poverty because they have lost all of their livestock.
Kahara added that his program will find alternatives and foresee strategies to restructure livelihoods.
We are going to look into how we can contribute towards coping capabilities of communities and ability to adapt to alternative sources of livelihood. Because again, when you look into the county, it has a huge resource potential outside the pastoralism.
Kahara amewaomba washikadau kwa ushirikiano na serikali
at the county level to come on board and have a very robust engagement with the young people and see the various ways through which they can be enabled and empowered.
He has however called on interested stakeholders from the national and county government to join in. Moses Sokich, Look Up TV.
Sometimes it happens. Bilingual reporting it is. Now, Turkana residents have raised their concerns to the government concerning the candidates that were nominated by different political parties. This is because some of the members that were nominated were from other counties. Now, the residents have threatened to interrupt their swearing-in Tuesday if their cries are not heard.
Post-election agreements have become a thorny issue. In Turkana, things are getting out of hand, with aggrieved parties expressing their voices of discontentment in the just concluded nomination exercise. The rifts and disappointment emerged after it is alleged that different political parties nominated candidates from other counties to represent the locals.
Ile mambo ya kunyanyaswa ilipita wakati ile. Hapa Turkana kuna anasa Turkana wale wako na sisi hapa. Wenye wanapiga kura hapa. Wangekuwa wanapatia hata nomination. Sisi tukua na kama Turkana hatungekasirika. Lakini utakujaje ukule ile chakula ambayo ukutoa jasho yako kwa kusema kweli.
The residents have threatened to interrupt the swearing in on Tuesday if their grievances are not heard.
Tuwezi kubali na hata hiyo siku ya swearing in hatuwezi kubali aingie kwa bunge. Arudi kwao kwa sababu sisi hatuna kazi, hatuna mashamba. Mashamba zetu ni kazi, masomo na wanyama.
These residents are now pleading with President William Ruto to intervene in the matter.
Mheshimiwa Rais, nomination bado inaenda kwa girlfriends. Bado imekuwa ni biashara. Inaenda kwa mandugu. Sisi wenye ambaye ni wanyonge wenye hatuna mandugu kwa IBC, wenye hatuna viongozi huku mbele wenye watatusaidia kwa chama, nani atatusaidia?
Grace Mureithi, Look Up TV.
Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha has called for the shutting of all pornographic sites, which he says expose children to huge amounts of inappropriate information at an early stage. Magoha, who opened the 94th Music Festival competition in Kisumu Monday, called upon the new government to rein in the sites that are inappropriate for children.
The outgoing Cabinet Secretary for Education, Professor George Magoha, has challenged members of the private sector to financially support learners in achieving their dreams. Magoha, who graced the 94th edition of the Kenya Music Festival at Kisumu Girls under the theme Kenya My Pride, My Future, the abrasive CS said that it was so heartbreaking seeing only a few government entities coming on board and sponsoring this year's event.
Without partnerships, it's not easy for the Ministry of Education to handle all activities of the Kenya Music Festival. I've been informed of the effort that our partners and the Executive Committee Music have put in towards nurturing.
This year's Music Festival event is marked after a 2-year break due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This year's Music Festival event is marked after a 2-year break due to This year's music festival event is marked after a 2-year break due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Magoha further said that the money being kept in banks
I want to say this to the private sector. Wake up and be counted. Why do you think having so much money in the bank has any value? I am actually ashamed to have just listened to the people who supported Kenya Music Festival. I hope that the next one, even though I shall not be there, will have the top banks in there and who is who to support our children. If you cannot support the children, if you can't support the children, who do you think is going to support them? And let me tell you, those with a lot of money in the bank, money in the bank is like manure in the store. It's only a fool who puts manure in the store. Because manure should be in the field, helping plants to grow.
In what seemed to be his last public appearance before leaving the office, Magoha thanked former President Uhuru Kenyatta for allowing him to serve as his education CS. Magoha is expected to leave office after President William Ruto names his cabinet in a few coming days.
And I dare say that I want to thank the former president for having identified me, knowing very well that I'm very difficult to work with. I hope I have not disappointed, but I've been to so many parts of this country, and it was pleasure that perhaps my last public appearance should be just next to where I stay.
Magoha, accompanied by the Kisumu Governor Professor Peter Nyang' Nyong'o, urged the new administration to ban all pornographic sites on the internet as seen in various countries around the globe. Daniel Dembede, Look Up TV, Kisumu County.
Well, that particular story then would take us on a short break. By the way, have you taken time to watch the music festivals in Kisumu? If you've not, you're missing on some very good entertainment. I will tell you that as somebody who's been following that, just that this time the calendar sort of took me out. I didn't know they were going on, otherwise I couldn't have been here. That I promise. Anyway, take time. I'm serious. Take time. On that particular one, we take a short break right here on the morning brief. Ankey Dorice on bat. We'll come back and take you all the way to 11 a.m. But then I'll join you from 11 to 12. Today, the question being, with droughts ravaging the country, businesses collapsing, livelihoods getting lost, farmers crying, what can you do for climate justice? Could you tell a story that can influence climate conversations across the country and more so across the globe? That will be my part from 11 to 12. But Ankey Dorice on bat comes back. We do have a proper author in the studio. Let's talk about poetry and poems. What inspires a poetic mind? Something that you may want to also look into. Now, be part and parcel of that at Look Up TV across all your social media platforms. Talk to us. We promise we talk back. See you at 11.
I don't know what that dream is that you have. I don't care how disappointing it might have been as you've been working toward that dream. That dream that you're holding in your mind, that it's possible. That some of you already know that it's hard. It's not easy. It's hard changing your life. That in the process